just join in once they're going. Welcome, everyone. Here we are again with some new wines from the new vintages. And it's kind of, usually we have a vintage or two from a previous vintage, but everything's 22. You guys are drinking all of our wine, so we're staying on this vintage. I don't know if we're almost out of most of other than a couple of the reds, which is the Symvoli and the Cab Franc. We moved through most of the 21s. Thank you. Glad you guys are thirsty. Let's see here. Has anybody planted the thyme or the what do you call that? Some savory
basil
thing? No,
I think it's just me.
It's called Summer Savory. You got the basil, Wes. This is the old one.
I stole some basil.
You stole some basil. Yeah, that's the stuff from last year.
Oh, that explains a lot.
Summer Savory. Probably why it's not
growing very well.
Yeah. Did anyone plant it? Is it growing? I think the gardener is supposed to plant ours in our little garden there for herb garden by the house. So we're planting that. Okay, well, we're going to start with a bubble. Once again, thank you guys for coming. It's a beautiful day outside. Thanks for coming inside to do this. Cheers. Cheers. So yeah, we got a bunch of basically summer style wines, all whites and rosé, all in time for summer season. I'm going to have Wes go over some of these wines. This one's, we got a couple of little differences here on the bubble, a couple interesting differences on the rosé because of the vintage. A lot of the wines definitely have different slightly different characters from our amazing Finger Lakes vintage variation. We like to talk about so much, mostly because the weather likes to give us lots of variation. So I'll let Wes go into a little bit and start with the bubble.
Okay.
Because Wes can't wait.
I'm trying to remember the bubble here. So this year the Riesling we use for the bubble is not actually our fruit. So we bought some fruit from our friends over at Swedish Hill, and which is great, good stuff. I was actually very happy with what they gave us. And it was tank fermented. I think this year it's drier than usual. I do not have the pamphlet in front of me, so I don't know.
Actually,
numbers.
I'm putting up I'm gonna put up
perfect. I can
the
see
slideshow. Can you see the slideshow?
Yes, I can see your slideshow.
Okay, so
but it's usual bubble affair. Tank fermented Riesling, force carbonated over at Lakewood, across the lake there. And I'm pretty sure this is drier than usual. I don't remember what.
It's actually it is pretty dry. It's 0.36.
So it's bone dry.
Yeah.
Okay, that's what I thought. I didn't think we did sugar. Yeah, we didn't do any sugar trials on this. We were pretty happy with it. I think the acid is a little lower than past years, which is why we probably left it drier. Just because the vintage was, it was very hot, very drought. We had a lot of drought stress. But the problem we had, the problem with the vintage was that overnight temperatures were not cool. And so that dropped the acidity out quite a bit. So we had some kind of our ratio of acid to sugar ratio was kind of weird. It was kind of closer together, if that makes sense. We had kind of lower sugars, but also a higher acid, which is a little counterintuitive, but that's really just because it was warm overnight. We were seeing 60, 65, even there were some nights that were 70 degrees overnight. And it's really important overnight for the grape's acidity to be cool. So when it's cool overnight, the photosynthesis stops, and that's kind of when acid starts to really drop out. if it's warm. So unfortunately, that was kind of what happened. Wasn't wasn't detrimental, wasn't terrible. We didn't really have to do any acid additions on anything.
It was
Um,
8.5
oh yeah, okay,
grams.
yeah. So
So
that's good. That's good. Good acid levels. Um, yeah, I don't really. That's pretty standard bubble. Good stuff. Easy
yeah,
drinking. Nothing too posh
yeah,
about it.
yeah. Just different fruit.
Different
Now,
fruit, yes. I mean, yeah. Going forward, I'm sure some of you are aware that we have started to purchase some fruit, which we've done in the past. So it's really nothing too new for us, but you guys are gobbling up our wine so quickly that we cannot we can't grow enough fruit at the moment. We've been planting kind of hysterically, just planting everywhere we can. We just put in 3 acres of Cab Franc, some Lagrein, some Syrah. I'm sure some more Riesling will probably be on the docket at some point. So we've just resorted to some of the wines to go purchase fruit for, and Bubble was one of them. The Riesling Bubble is, again, there's nothing, it's good. It's good drinking wine. It's good summer wine. It's good porch wine. It's just a good everyday wine, and we kind of felt that maybe we should leave our estate fruit for something. We work really hard. The guys out in the vineyard work tirelessly to grow that fruit, and I'm always on top of them around harvest about when we're picking and when we're not picking. So we put a lot of work into it, and so we thought, well, let's see if we can find some good fruit from somebody else that meets our standards for bubble. And Swedish Hill delivered. So that's kind of, I think, what we're doing this year again, if they can get us some fruit. And I think it worked out.
yeah, the we probably put ours let's get to our dry Riesling or
Towards
semi-dry
dry
Riesling.
and semi. Yeah, the
Yeah,
semi saw some fruit from sawmill, and then the dry is all estate fruit.
yeah. So
So,
grapes. Ordering grapes this year we'll probably get what we did for Bubble for Swedish Hill, and then Sawmill Creek, which is
yep.
about a mile down the road. We've worked with them actually when Atwater first started as Atwater in '99, 2000. Most of our reds at the time were from Sawmill Creek. It wasn't until really 2008
Like
that
8, yeah,
we
I was gonna
we
say.
were starting to our reds that we planted back in the day started to come in. So it's sort of fun to go back and we've been worked with Sawmill for a lot of years, so we know them very well. So continuing to get some extra fruit for them for various for our blends and for things like bubble. Like we're trying to keep our estate fruit on our more premium wines like the rosés, the Cab Franc, things like that. So yeah, it's fun to work with a little different fruit. Once again, it's all right from around the area here, right from our backyard. So um, we used to have the Navone Riesling we used to get from down the road. You remember the single vineyard Navone vineyard Riesling? We had that for some years because we helped them plant that. Um, and it was sort of fun. That one was so unique from our site. It was always fun to have it to compare, have two single varietals from like the East West block and then the Navone block, and have taste them together and see how different. Once again, same winemakers making it, but different elevation, different soil, how different the Riesling can be. So yeah, there it is. Any questions on the bubble? This is a forced carbonated. So Wes is making a dry Riesling, and then we put it in the sort of mobile tanks, and then I drive it across the lake to our friends at Lakewood have a special bottling line for forced carbonated beverage. They takes a couple days, they chill it down to around 30 degrees, and then they inject CO2 like a beer, like some beers and ciders. It stays the pressure build. They put a certain amount of pressure in there, and they have a special bottling line that keeps the pressure and then puts the screw cap on and everything else. So We make the wine. We just I drive it up there, and they just run it through their bottling line. We don't have a fancy counter pressure bottling line, so while we bottle all the other wines here. That's one of the ones we don't do for just because it requires a special bottling line. Any questions on any of that? From no one? Okay.
Gonna bring back the rosé version sometime soon.
Ah, yes, I knew it was coming. I
Ah.
was waiting. The
It's my
Pinot
favorite.
bubble. I know. It's always tough to put fancy Pinot into a car. What we've done is we actually made Wes's got in barrel. Is it out of barrel yet? Or yeah, is that the one that you're bottling? We're bottling soon. Which one are we
If you
bottling?
mean the rosé that was not intentionally a rosé sparkling,
yes.
that is bottled last year. So we have
Oh, that's
some
right.
we have some rosé sparkling coming, and in the future I'd love to do some traditional method style, champagne style. In 21 we did a blend of Chardonnay and Pinot Noir, and the color extraction was a little too much to call it just a brut, so it's more like a rosé. And then when that in a couple of years when that's released, I'll do some more kind of trials on that, to kind of make it a little more rosé-y, if that makes sense. But for as far as the forced carbonated goes, I don't think we're ever going to do Pinot again. Pinot is just too hard to grow to put into that product. So it's just from a financial standpoint, we have to pay Lakewood to carbonate that stuff for us. We have to transfer it over there. We have to do all this stuff. So like the cost of return for putting Pinot Noir in the Pinot bubble is just not economical. However, I could totally see us finding something else instead of Pinot. So some other rosé that's just not made out of Pinot. So some rosé bubble, it just might not be Pinot. It could be Cab Franc. It could be a hybrid. So as far as the forced carbonated rosé goes, that is kind of still up in the air, but has a chance of coming back. And as far as just traditional method sparkling rosé, that is somewhere on the docket. I'd love to do it this year. I don't know if we'll do it this year. It's totally dependent on what's available, and how much crop we get. But you'll get some rosé sparkling at some point. Maybe it might be in a pet nat form. If you're willing to.
Ball bubbles, so I don't care how you do it.
Awesome. I love it. You will hopefully be seeing maybe some sort of rosé pet nat this year. We'll see. I'll see what magic I can work.
That sounds good to look forward to, though. Looking forward to it.
All right. Yeah. So yeah, that was a fun product. I think when we originally made it, we had I think they had a glut of, they just had extra Pinot one year, and they did it one year, and then it was like, oh, now we got to make it again. And then it sort of took off basically based on that. Like somebody said, well, wow, we loved it. And it was like, well, I guess we have to make it because so-and-so is going to be upset. And it sort of kept going. But it is hard you put Pinot in sort of that role because of, yeah, like Wes said, it is sort of precious. So you're always trying to make the sort of most premium thing out of Pinot because of all the extra time it costs. We got a lot of Riesling, so we can make Riesling to some like that, this fun product, which this is what this is. It's not a horribly complicated wine. It's basically a fun wine that's meant to be drunk fresh. That's for summer. It's one of those sort of fun Rieslings, and that's the great thing about Riesling. You do all kinds of fun stuff with all kinds of wines with Riesling. We do traditional method, this fun bubble, our premium dry rosés, and so this was just something with the amount of Riesling we had, we were able to do and do within that sort of budget. And we do our best with it, but it is that sort of fun, fresh style of wine. That's not something necessarily you'd age and things like that. Although I sometimes people keep them around for a while. That they're not really meant for long-term, laying down like a traditional method would be. So All right, let's see what we got here. Oh, we're on the blend. Let's see, there's going to be lots of grapes on this list. So starting off with Vidal Blanc, going to Chardonnay, and next Cayuga White,
Yeah.
Vignoles, and Gewürztraminer.
Oh, he converts too.
Yeah, we had a little bit of Gewürz in there. Here is the list of all of the stuff in this amazing wine.
Oh,
We did quite a
3%. Okay.
quite a blend. Yeah, it wasn't a lot. Yeah. There's
Yeah.
so here is our Stonebridge White, and you know the last one was like this too. We had quite a big blend of various hybrids, vinifera. Yeah, this is sort of what we do. I think Wes has some ideas for the next, the next iteration of Stonebridge White. But it's always sort of a fun wine for us. We've dried this up over the years to make it, a little bit drier style. Although this one is slightly sweeter than the previous iteration. So you can go on about that, Wes. Please do.
Yeah, so
Oh, acid's 8.1 and the 0.9 sugar and 3.2 pH.
yeah, so this is the usual, I shouldn't say usual lineup, but Vidal, Cayuga White, and Vignoles tends to be kind of the Stonebridge kind of backbone. Going forward, Vidal, most of this will be purchased. Vignole, we don't have any more Vignoles on the farm, or Vidal or Cayuga White. So most of this fruit will be purchased in the future, which is fine. We get most of this from Sawmill Creek. Depending on the year, we might get some Cayuga White from somebody else. Same with the Vignoles. And so the Gewürztraminer that's in there we did this last year, and I believe it was no, I won't call it an accident, but we had no more tank. So we basically filled up a tank, and we basically had too much Gewürztraminer for one of our smaller tanks and not enough for one of our larger tanks, if that makes sense. So you don't really want a lot of headspace in a tank, especially after fermentation, because oxygen is in there. It's basically like a half empty bottle of wine. Think of it like that. So there's more oxygen that's getting into that wine instead if it were full. So we basically filled up one of our tanks. We had a little bit extra, and the thought was, well, what are we going to do with this extra? We could put it in a barrel, but we didn't have any barrels available. So where do we put it? We put it in the Stonebridge White, and it was great. It ended up being really, really great.
But we did trials, and we tried it. We really liked it.
Yes, we did trials first. We didn't just dump it in. We did trials, and so, and it ended up being really, really nice. And so we did the same thing this year. And going forward, we will probably continue. It'll either be Gewürztraminer or its cousin Traminette, which is a offspring of Gewürztraminer, and another grape that I don't know off the top of my head. It's an American hybrid grape, and it's very similar in taste. It has that kind of floral, rosy nose that Gewürztraminer brings, and just that little bit brings a lot to the wine. A little Gewürztraminer goes a long way, so that's why that's in there. And the Chardonnay, we had a lot of Chardonnay. We had a lot of Chardonnay this year, and it was mostly to bulk up the wine. We did some trials, I think, on that too, and it worked. Chardonnay is a great base wine for a blend. And we were pretty much down on everything else. So the Chardonnay came in and kind of saved the day for a lot of wines. And this was one of them. And the reason for the 0.9 residual is because the Vignoles. So we made some sweeter off-dry Vignoles this year. And that residual sugar is just left over from the Vignoles. And it fit. We didn't feel like it needed any more sugar. I like the wines to be drier. You know, under old ownership, under Ted's ownership, the previous owner before George bought it, sweeter wines were more common and more expected. And we do make the sweet vignoles from time to time, kind of on an every other year basis, or basically when it sells out. And it's a good wine too. It's not that sweet, but it is definitely not dry. So that bit of sugar did carry over to the rest of the wines. And yeah, Stonebridge is almost always fermented separately, and then blended. Kind of the base wines are blended. When I say base, I mean like the Vidal, the hybrids, the Vignoles, the hybrid, the Kegel White, and the Vidal. They're usually blended, and then we kind of go back and see what else we need to add, if anything. Do some sugar trials. We need to do sugar trials, but usually we don't, since we're trying to make some drier. Pretty much all of our wines, pretty much on the dry side. Yeah, it's not aged very long. It's pretty much fermented. Hangs out for a few months, and then we bottle it up in usually January, February.
Yeah, these we tend to. This is once again the sort of fresh summer wine. We have these ready for springs. So these are wines that don't need to be aged longer. Like you know, if we had a Riesling or dry Riesling, those we try to keep in tank on lees for several months into the summer before we bottle them. We're actually going to be bottling another week or so. Finally, the dry Riesling, because we ran out of our other one, but that's been on lees for a while, so we don't tend to want to usually bottle those right away. But for these fresher style wines that don't really require it, you know, long-term aging or lees contact, these are going to be early, including the rosés, or at least some of the rosés.
Yeah, and the hybrids do kind of a really good job at making really fresh, very fruity wines. You don't need to necessarily age these on the lees to give it more body or texture. They have enough going on. They have enough kind of pep and acidity and fruit, and they're very extroverted grapes, and so they fit really well into that kind of quicker, shorter aging style.
All right, yeah, you just Paul, you just tried you just got some more of the last sort of cases of the 21.
The 20, just gonna bring that up that at our tasting earlier this week, we got to do the 21 and the 22 side by side.
Oh, fun.
Oh, it was interesting.
Well, you got like half and half.
I know the blends are different, but I'm sure the seasons between 21 and 22 had a difference there too.
Very different, yeah. I mean, night and day different. 21 was wet and soggy and warm, very warm, but wet, all nonstop. Whereas 22 was the opposite until kind of September. Unfortunately, we started getting some rain in September and October, and we kind of had to dance around the rain during harvest. But the fruit from those years are very different. 22 is a pretty clean year. 21 was tough. There was some rot on everything. But
comment had been they were both good, but good for different reasons.
Yep.
Yeah, it seems like this one definitely is I think a little bit of residual. Definitely comes off as a much more sort of fruity. You know, like a little bit of sweetness adds a little bit of that. Really, lots of fresh fruit. The last one, I really love the 21. That was one of my favorite ones we did, and you know, you have another year on the aging on that too, so that's or it adds to it too. But it was nice and dry. It had a really the acidity was really great on it. Very different with a little bit of extra residual. Changed it quite a bit, but you know, you also have a slightly different blend too. So yeah, they're pretty fun to try together, and I'm glad you were able to.
Yeah, as I said, it was fun to try that in the tasting room side by side. And I know what you're saying about the 21 Stonebridge White, but truthfully, in my opinion, a lot of your 21 things are very good.
Yeah, so you know, we were pretty we were pretty sheepish about the 21s early, which, you know, it was a tough year. But I mean, I've been pretty pleased. I mean, the whites or the reds, which were once again sort of, they weren't the big dark ones of 2020,
Yeah,
but
like
they were
almost looked like a Pinot Noir. It was a light color.
yeah, light, but they're super aromatic. They're super fruity. They're just a different expression.
Well,
I actually love. They're really easy drinking wines. They're really fun. So yeah, I mean, they are so different from the 20 to 21, but I mean, I've sort of really fallen. I really love the Sivoli. That was my favorite red of the vintage, the Sivoli blend, and I once again different from 20, but it has its own charm. We had an issue. 18 was like that too, but 18 wasn't as outgoing as 21 was. So, all right. Any other questions about our fun Stonebridge white? All right. I guess Amy decided to put a picture of me on this one. Oh, it was a little thinner. When did you take that picture? It looked a little bit better.
Couldn't have been that long ago.
I couldn't have been. Yeah. Start wearing black
And
t-shirts.
the tasting rooms
Slim me
up to
down a
date.
bit.
So
Oh, some bottling line shots. Yay. Oh, there's the actual stone bridge. There it is. So if you guys, that's the actual stone bridge it's named after. A couple of years ago, Amy took the bottles up there and took pictures of the two stone bridges on the stone bridge. So we should actually go down to the ravine to get a good picture of the stone bridge, but there's the racing surface. Okay, here we go. Rosé time. Be excited. It's rosé time. Le Grind. Okay, see, this is new. We've only done a couple vintages, and they've all been rosé from using our Le Grind grapes. There we are.
Testing that out.
A little bit different characteristics here for other ones. That 0.9 acres is now, as of a week ago, is now, well, it was over an acre. It's like 1.2, I think. So it's now 192.
Yeah.
2 acres of this. So we just planted a whole other over an acre above the pond over here. So we liked it enough even just as a rosé that we ended up planting more. And there's a cool shot there of the little cluster there before it's flowered there, I believe. A little blurry. But yeah, little tiny soon-to-be grapes. Different flavor profile. Yeah, wild cherry. I mean, the rosés were pretty fun like that. We really, once again, we haven't made a red out of it yet. We're hoping we get enough grapes. I'm not sure after our frost damage. This one actually did take some damage. How much we're going to get and what we end up doing with it, whether we have to make another pet nat or rosé or something of it. But we would like to, once the next acre gets in, is actually make a red wine out of it. It actually makes a really nice red wine. So, and then next on the list, this is another one of these multi grape blends. Zweigelt, same thing. We planted the first 0.9 acres of this with the Le Grind, and we haven't made a red wine of this either. It's only been a rosé blends. But we're excited to eventually make red wine out of it. These both harvest a little earlier than the other reds. Definitely seem to ripen earlier. We did this in September for the rosé this year. And then we haven't planted any more of this yet. We're still we decided definitely the Le Grind, but we haven't decided yet on the Zweigelt. And Merlot, we have a little bit of Merlot here. You tend to only see it in blends from Atwater. I think 15 was the only time we did a actual varietal of Merlot. Doesn't mean it's not going to happen again. It's just it's really good for the blends. We usually use them Cab Merlot, Merlot,
Yep.
Cab Sav. Yeah, it works really well in blends.
You've done.
So there it is there.
I vote for a Merlot.
What's that?
Yep, I second that.
Some more Merlot. Yeah, that 15 Merlot was pretty awesome. We did a full carbonic maceration on that whole cluster, whole cluster. And yeah, we'll probably bring that back for some club. I don't have a lot of it left, but that one's pretty fun. So we'll see. One of these, when we have another 2020 year, we'll make some more single or varietal Merlot. And I guess, she didn't put the last blender in there, which was Chardonnay.
Yeah.
Secret ingredient to this rosé, Chardonnay.
Yeah, I was surprised to see that on the.
Woo! Well, we was at a rosé event over the weekend, and actually, another producer, Chardonnay, is not often, but it is used in rosé blends. It is one grape that is sometimes used in rosé blends. We had an extra of it, of course, and Wes can talk more about that, and why we used some Chardonnay this year. And it's off to you, Wes. I've spoken enough.
Yeah, so this is kind of an iteration. This rosé is kind of an iteration on the 21 rosé of Zweigelt Magrine. It tastes very different from that. It was also a very different vintage. But the two play really well together. I don't think we'll ever do a red barreled blend of the two. But for rosé, they pair nicely. So the Merlot went in there simply because we didn't. The Merlot by itself was fine, but we only had like 180 gallons of it, and that's not enough for. We basically came to the conclusion that we could have like 5 rosés that are all really small, or we could have 3 rosés, one of which was a decent amount, and then 2 that were a little smaller. So we opted for the bigger blend. We did some trials. They tasted well together, and then the Chardonnay. So that kind of came out of 2 reasons. One, we had a lot of it. We didn't need to get rid of any. But the 2022 vintage was, like I said earlier, it was a drought year. So, and it was a drought during fruit set. So what that usually equates to is very small berries. And so when you have small berries, your skin to pulp ratio is a lot greater. So that means in general, there's not as much skin to pulp. But in this year, it was much closer to kind of equal parts. Maybe not that extreme, but kind of closer together. And so that resulted in a lot more color and a lot more tannin. And so we direct press these pretty much. They see a few hours of skin contact kind of just as they're getting processed. But they're, in general, I refer to these as direct press. So that just means they went right into the press, they were destemmed, went right into the press and pressed. So there shouldn't be a lot of extraction, but as you can see, there is. And we kind of felt that the rosés were not rosé-y enough. They were, at the time of blending, the reds were they were a little too extracted. And they were very representative of the vintage. So we kind of let them hang out for, a couple weeks, or more like a couple months, and at the end, we kind of said, what are we going to do? We tried an acid addition. That did not help. We didn't like how that tasted in trials. And I think at that point, we had already put some Chardonnay into some other wines, the Stonebridge mostly. And I think we just said, well, sometimes people blend white and reds together to make rosé. Well, we have some Chardonnay. Well, let's try it. And we tried it and it worked out really well. It really kind of brings up some citrusy notes. It brings up the acid a little bit. And I really like this wine. I've always enjoyed kind of heavier rosés. This is kind of very reminiscent of rosés coming out of the Tavel region of France, which usually see some skin contact. And they're much bigger rosés. I think this style is definitely a little more complex. It's a little more interesting. There's a time and a place for kind of a porch pounder rosé, kind of like the 2021 Cab Franc Blau rosé that was very fruity, good wine, and you could crush it in an afternoon, no problem. Not that you can't crush this, because I've already gone through a third of a bottle. But I kind of like this style, and going forward, I'm not really afraid to do a little more extraction, whether or not it's kind of vintage related or intentional. And also the other funny thing, another kind of happy accident this year is that many of our wines went through spontaneous malolactic fermentation. The rosés were the first that we noticed, and that's not necessarily typical. It's not unheard of. It happens. But for rosé, some people do it for rosé, some people don't. But I quite like it. I think it kind of fits that theme. The wines were already kind of big and a little more extracted due to the vintage. And the malolactic kind of brings some mid-palate and kind of softens things up a little bit. It almost did the wine a favor. It almost got rid of, there was genuine tannin in this wine at one point, which was weird for a rosé. And I really think the malolactic kind of smooths that stuff out. So going forward, you might see all of our rosés go through malolactic, probably on purpose next time. I'm very happy with this style, and it kind of sets us apart kind of from everybody else a little bit, and that's kind of a goal of mine. And yeah, I mean, and so yes, this saw malolactic, was not intentional, but again, happy accident. And along with
well, the acidity was only 6.1, so
our acidity was never high to begin with.
Yeah.
And it was kind of extracted. Again, that comes back to those warm nights. So acid was not high. And you can see some of these harvest bricks. I mean, 18.4 for this Weigelt and the Grime that's combined. The Merlot was coming up on 20 bricks. But and this is mid to late September, so these numbers aren't horribly low for that time of year. But the acids in relation to those bricks, that was very different.
The acid should have been much higher for
should have been
18 bricks.
Yeah, and acid should have been 8 grams at that, 7 to 8 grams at that bricks level. And picking for acid is I really pick more for acid than I pick for bricks. Bricks is not always an indication of ripeness. I feel like acid's a better indication of kind of phenological ripeness. So yes, that's kind of the explanation for the wine. Another really wonderful accident. I'm very happy with this. I think it's
a lot of interesting. This vintage we've had several unique, weird vintages. This one was definitely because of the completely low vintage. We were down 50 or more percent in our amount of grapes we harvested, and everybody was. But just seeing this stuff, like the wines would never go through malolactic unless we
purposely
made it. But the acids were always much higher for rosé, where here it wasn't, and none of them were, even the Pinot. And so it was just so different. And yeah, this is an interesting style. We've talked about doing, barrel fermented rosés too. We make enough rosés where we make most of the time 3 different rosés sometimes. So it's sort of fun to be able to, even if we do it in the future, is being able to make, our usual sort of maybe lighter, more acidic style, but also trying to make some of these more, I call them evening rosés. Like this one, I consider this the evening rosé, bigger bodied, a little bit more seductive. It's really nice. I like it. Too.
Can I back you up a few minutes? You said
Yes.
it wasn't rosé enough. You meant by
Yeah.
color or by
Everything.
by
I remember when we pressed this, we were pressing these grapes off, and I thought, damn, that's dark.
Yeah.
That is
so it was
dark.
color. Essentially, it was the color.
Well, no, so that was one thing. Color to me is irrelevant. I don't mind.
Yeah, I
you know,
understand.
I took note, but no, it was the texture. It had
So it was
tannin.
too heavy in the
It
texture.
had, I mean, it had tannin. It was very weird. And so that's where the Chardonnay came in. I mean, the wine was, it
Yeah.
would have been a tannic
I
rosé, which is
Chardonnay was
weird.
turned out to be your answer. I just want to know. I missed the transition to how you got there. That's all.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah, it was just, it did not taste like a rosé. It almost tasted like
So
a
it's
bit of a
tasty.
red wine. Yep.
Well, at least from Atwater, Atwater's house style. We talk about sometimes our house style. Atwater house style is usually this sort of more acidic driven, fresh style. We're pressing right away. We're not leaving on skin, so there's not a lot of extractions. Our style for rosé has always been that sort of more zippy, once again, porch pounder, if you want to call it that, style. And that's we purposely did that. That was part of our style of that. We always liked, the rosés were going to be that. And then we had reds that were, big bodied. We talked about doing barrel stuff in the past, and we just never got around to it. There's a lot going on in harvest, and you have lots of different things you're interested in doing. And we always put that as like, oh, we're going to try that one day. We really would like to do that. This vintage sort of forced it on us in a way. And I think, like Wes said, I think it's something unique and interesting, and it might be sort of, finally getting to that. We might end up doing more of that in the future. And like I said, we make enough of these rosés that we can, even if we didn't want to do them all this way, we still want to have that lighter acid one. We can have that more, once again, more extracted style if we want to. So I think this gave us, at least, for me, it was interesting to see, and maybe gave Wes sort of to say, hey, this is something we can do in the future too as a winemaker. So yeah, it's just once again, no matter how long you've been doing this, and I always refer to Vinny, who's been here 23 years now, and moving, as he moves, been here all these years, I've worked with him. It's half the time, and almost every year there's something like he goes, well, never saw this before. It's like the vintages do bring stuff, even for those who have been doing it for years and years, decades. You're always surprised. There's always something new that comes about that you weren't expecting, or you didn't plan on, but you work through it and you end up finding how to make the best of it. And this was one of those where we weren't expecting this, but it ended up turning out to be something that maybe we're going to do more of. So yeah, fun.
So that's why it's 20% Chardonnay.
No, that's,
Yes.
I mean, it's unique. I've never seen a rosé with, that I'm aware of, using Chardonnay grapes.
There's a few places that it's popular on Long Island to blend in some white varietals, make blend red and white together to make a rosé. For us, it was really more of a necessity than anything else, and it also bulked up the rosé, which is another thing to consider. We got 20% more rosé, which
Filled your tank.
yeah, I mean, we kind of needed it too. So it filled a multi-role, filled in multiple shoes. The Chardonnay made the wine a little more lean, but it also bulked it up, which is always something we want, especially for rosé. It seems like we never have enough of it. So yeah.
accidental malolactic fermentation something you could explain scientifically, or did it completely surprise you?
It was a complete surprise.
I mean,
It,
it
it
makes
actually
sense.
happened.
Makes sense because the acids were lower, so it probably had more chance of it going through
What
than
was
if
the
it was higher.
pH? What was the final
pH
pH?
365.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was a combination of a few things. I mean, some of our wines. So the Riesling, for example, that also went through malolactic unintentionally. I mean,
Oh
that was
yeah.
another. So that's another story. I'll get to that in a second. I'll answer your.
So kind of a
frizz-
perfect storm of ingredients, essentially.
It kind of was. I mean, so for the rosé, I don't really have a great, answer for that. I mean, the pHs were high. And so malolactic bacteria don't like low pH. So pretty much anything below 3 pH, malolactic bacteria don't really like, they can't live. Some can, some strains can. There's multiple strains of malolactic bacteria, like there are multiple strains of yeast. And so some can survive and will ferment a little bit at low pHs, but it's not likely. So this probably happened
No, we're still on.
kind of right at the end of fermentation. I mean, this rosé saw 5 months in tanks. It probably saw some sulfur, but still sometimes malolactic will kick in towards the end of fermentation and kind of do its own thing while the fermentation is going. That's not super common, but it happens. It also happened to some of Vinny's wine for Billsborough, and it also happened at Hector Wine Company for their rosé. And I haven't talked to them about their other whites, but it also happened with them. So I don't know if it was vintage related. I would not be surprised if it was vintage related. We're pretty we
Wasn't
don't do,
unique just to your acreage, it kind of happened all over the lake.
yeah, I mean it happened in Hector. I haven't talked to anybody else. I think I've asked a few people and they said no, or they didn't know yet when it was happening or when we found out. So yeah, it was a bit of an anomaly, but it's kind of something I'm hoping to integrate again, kind of across the board, not necessarily for maybe everything. We'll see. But a lot of our other wines went through malolactic spontaneously as well. The Chardonnay that was in tank was not inoculated with malolactic bacteria, but it went through anyway. It went through spontaneously. The dry Riesling did, as well as the Pinot Gris. Those were kind of living in very different situations. Those did not see sulfur. Sulfur will inhibit malolactic fermentation from occurring. So those wines, I wasn't surprised when it came back. We got lab results back and said, oh, yep, it went through malolactic. But we weren't necessarily expecting it.
So we didn't have to filter some of those things because they
Exactly. And then, that's kind of something I'm slowly working on is filtering less if we can get away with it. So the Gewürztraminer this year is not filtered, the Pinot Gris is not filtered, and the Gruner is not filtered.
By this
It
year,
won't be
22.
Yes, for 22. We probably could have gotten away with not filtering the rosés either. It wasn't really a thought at the time, but it's just kind of one of those things, kind of Atwater's, at least the cellar motto is, if we don't need to do it, why are we doing it? If it doesn't make sense to do it, then we shouldn't be doing it. Unless we gain something from it, unless we have to do it for making stable wines, that's a whole nother story. But if the wines are already stable, meaning there's no sugar or very little sugar, and they've gone through malolactic fermentation, then they don't need to be steriled. So why sterile filter them? Yeah.
All right.
I
Look
think
at that.
kind of like that, because malolactic fermentation happened accidentally and it worked out well, you might actually try to do that if you need to in the future.
Correct. Yep. I'm hoping that it will just magically happen again. Because you can inoculate, so you can inoculate from malolactic at pretty much any time. Usually post fermentation. You don't really want to do it during fermentation because then they start doing weird. The yeast and the bacteria start kind of fighting each other in a way. and they don't really get along.
Fight.
But post fermentation, if we have a wine that I'm thinking, this is kind of boring, or this rosé isn't really, isn't really tasting too great. Malolactic brings a lot to the table. It brings texture, it brings flavor and aroma. It does a lot. I remember the Chardonnay in the tank before it went through malolactic. I thought, ugh, this isn't that great. And even the Riesling, malolactic really can change a wine. Sometimes not in the right way. It is not it is definitely can be a double-edged sword. So you want to be careful with it, but it is definitely something that can really evolve your wine if you're lacking something.
So what does it do, Wes, as far as what it changes as far as the chemical?
So the bacteria is called Ononochus oni. That is the whatever the real name for the bacteria. So what it does, it's very similar to yeast. So yeast consume sugar and then produce alcohol and CO2. In this case, this bacteria eats malic acid. So malic acid is like the acid that you find in like green apples, which is found in all grapes and in many, many other fruits. So what this bacteria does is basically consumes that malic acid, and the byproduct of that consumption or that fermentation, if you want to call it that, is lactic acid. So the acid that you find in, milk, which doesn't sound appealing, but that lactic acid brings some creaminess. And it depends on the strain. Some strains, if you get a California Chardonnay, that really buttery diacetyl is the compound name. Sometimes that is a result of malolactic, not barrel. Although malolactic and barrels are usually synonymous with one another. Usually if a wine is in barrel or ages in barrel, it goes through malolactic. That's just kind of how it goes. It doesn't have to be that way. So malolactic can bring a lot of texture. Usually it's the mid palate. So it's kind of, in between this first sensation of the wine and then, the aftertaste. Can really bring some weight. It brings a lot of weight to the wine. It also brings down your acidity. So you lose that malic acid, you gain lactic, but the lactic doesn't have as much kind of punch to it, so you lose acid overall. So in red wines, it smooths out tannins as well, brings down the acidity, and brings on mid palate.
Well, if you want to experiment with us, a glass with about half bubble Riesling and half dry rosé is pretty good.
Good.
I got my bubbly rosé.
Nice.
Okay.
Hey, do what you got to do. Oh wow, look at that.
Oh, there's Wes and I at the Rosé Soiree. So last weekend was Geneva. Yearly they have a Rosé Soiree, which is only Finger Lakes Rosé. So we were up there in Geneva at the Pulteney Park, pouring we only had the one rosé. We have two others, but they're small batch, 100 cases, and I didn't actually get them out of the warehouse anyway. So we had this rosé was there at the soiree that we were pouring with everybody else. Lots of producers. I forgot how many different folks there.
Probably a dozen, a little over a dozen, maybe.
Yeah, it's
Maybe
fun
2
tasting everybody. And this is one where all of us, like owners and winemakers, this is one all of them go to. It's a really fun event, and we get to talk to everybody, all of our friends in the industry, and it's really fun. And we get to dress up. I didn't really quite dress up, but Wes definitely did.
My other shirt was not
Yeah,
in good condition.
Dressed up?
Yeah. He got that cool rose that he's got there out of felt rose. That was a big hit, actually. It was quite a hit.
It really was.
It was quite a hit.
The things I do to sell wine. It's tough.
Yeah, I know. There's we got a couple pictures here before we go. There's the guys with the planter. They're planting. That's the N7, the Lagrind. So that's them planting above the pond. That beautifully prepared field. So they're planting the vines, and there's one right there. So these are bare rooted. So it basically looks like a little stick with a bunch of roots on it, and then the graft So this is bare rootstock, a specific rootstock that the varietal is grafted to. So you can sort of see that sort of area that's a little bit rougher there. That's where the graft is, and then you can see the they've been in sawdust in a box, and so they're a little bit the little shoots there are a little bit bleached because they haven't been in sun yet. But those are the initial buds coming off of the varietal. So, and that's in the ground. And so we hire a group that comes out, local planter. He's got a GPS guided planter that puts them in nice straight rows. And yay, thank you.
4, 5, 6 years until you'll get grapes off of that.
4 to
Four or
5.
five.
Yeah, 4 will get something. That's usually when we get something for rosé. Hopefully 5th year it starts coming in, and then definitely 6th year we should be getting more full crops out of that. And then we also planted the 3.5 acres of Cab Franc, which is if you've been on the farm, definitely where the Two Goats is below their solar panels. We own all the property all the way to the lake, and we just planted that entire field that got new drainage tile and refixed and everything else, and they just planted 3.5 acres of there. We'll be planting more next year in that area.
Right?
What's that?
It's opposite where the pond is, right?
Yes, it's on the other side of the farm, south.
Yeah.
The south side farm.
That's what I mean. You're gonna have to update your map.
Yeah, the south side of the farm, just below the Two Goats, is where we planted the Cab Franc, and then above our pond there on the north side of the farm, we planted Le Grind. And so it's harder to see because there's a little hill there. It's hard to see them from the tasting room.
It is, yeah.
But definitely the Cab Franc over there by the solar panels, it looks like a memorial right now because we put them in and they put what's called grow tubes. So they're these orange or green tubes that they put over that to protect the vine. And so they put these big tubes. I don't know, they're probably like,
Blue, but they're all over.
they're 2.5 foot or 3 foot high or whatever they are, and they protect them. And then the shoots will grow up through the tube to the top, and then at toward the end of the season they'll remove them, and then next year they'll put the poles in and the wires, and then they'll put a string to help tie them get them growing up to the wires next year. So they're going to just be like this for this year in their little grow tubes. Then next year they'll be outfitted with their trellis system and get ready to start producing and grow. But this year, so all you see is these orange tubes in these really precise rows. So next time you come, you'll see this it looks really cool right now. It looks like some kind of like art installation or a memorial field. It looks neat.
And this is why I drink wine and don't grow it. I do not have
That's
that
right.
combination.
There's lots going on, yeah. So this little vine will eventually become the trunks and all the stuff up there. So not only did we have to do all this prep work, drainage tile, this was considerable amount of money on 8 acres. Then these are planted, and then once they're planted, then somebody's got to do all this work. Planter comes in. There's like 4 tractors out there that were preparing the property. Before that, there was machines that came and did the drainage tile. That took months. And then next year, we're still not done. Next year, we got to put all the poles, the wires, we attach, some ropes for them to grow up to the wires. Then all that other stuff involved. This is a long game stuff and a lot of upfront costs. And once again, farming is hard, and I like to keep throwing that out at everybody because we are sort of as consumers, and once again we who live in a more rural community understand it, but we forget that connection to actual growing sometimes, and what it does take. Things like this freeze that happened that I know a lot of people are talking about. It's not until major things happen that we sort of realize, how difficult nature can be and how difficult it is to grow anything, whether it's corn or vines or anything. So that always sort of humbles us, is knowing about how difficult a lot of this stuff is. So I like to make sure everyone has shares in that connection of this sort of difficulty of life on Earth here. Any other questions? Yeah, stop share. All right. I hope everyone enjoyed these. Once again, sort of another unique vintage variation on our Atwater wines. Some new things we learned that we might pick up, and just a sort of another iteration of another vintage. I look forward to hopefully the next club shipment we're going to be bottling the dry Riesling soon. It won't be in bottle long, but it'll be interesting for everyone to taste that, because as Wes said, we had some different things go on there, going through malolactic too. So that's going to be another interesting, unique wine, which is a blend of, it's not the East-West, it's a blend of East-West and our tanked wine. So we had gone through trials and really liked that blend better than doing two separate ones. It actually worked out that the blend of them was better. So we decided to blend it this year. So there won't be just an East-West, it'll be a blend of East-West and the other Riesling we had. So that's pretty fun. That's going to be an interesting one to see how the Rieslings did in this unique vintage. And probably also the semi-dry too will be in the next shipment. I'm probably just putting that stuff together, give you guys a taste of what the next one will be. And then there'll be the other rosé. I think the Pinot rosé will probably be in there too. So we'll have a rosé and some Rieslings for the August shipments too. So we'll have more white and rosé. Reds aren't really coming to the fall, so you'll have to wait till November for all the new reds that'll come out. They need a little
November
more
is
time.
perfect timing. We will
They're
be there.
delicious.
Little
They're
more
delicious.
time. Yeah, they got to still bottle them.
They're good.
The cow or the Stonebridge will probably be in there in the middle somewhere. Yeah. So the new Stonebridge, which is another. We went back to hybrids, so it's all Foch and
Noiret.
Noiret, yeah, Noiret. So that should be fun to taste that too. That's still in barrels. Haven't bottled that yet, but it's coming up. Wes has got to get in there and empty all those barrels and get them up to the tank. So there's still a lot of stuff to be done here going forward next couple months. But yeah, we think it was a successful year. Not as much wine as we hoped for because of the drought. We're hoping this vintage gives us minus the freeze. I think we should have a pretty good vintage here, but we definitely need to make some more wine. We're low on wine. We need to make more wine to keep up. So thank you guys also for, just being part of the club. This helps get us through our seasons, and it really humbles us to know that once again, we see you guys, use a lot of you guys all the time. We really appreciate that. What you do for us is, being a part of that and enjoying our wines and staying with us, even in all these cool, interesting vintages. So thank you guys again for everything that you do for us. And we, it's great seeing everybody when they come down, if you can, to the tasting room. If not, people that are out of state or can't come all the time, coming to this too is just as fun for us, and seeing everybody enjoying the wine. So thank you guys. Thanks for the new folks that are coming to this. We hope to see you again on these things. They tend to be pretty small group endeavors, but a lot of these folks you see right here will be at the next ones because they come to all of them. So we got
wine racks in the background.
Yeah, that's
yeah, that would be us.
Brett could probably show you where's the Atwater section, Brett?
Well, it's also
by grain,
but there's a lot of Atwater back here.
Yeah.
It's by grain.
I'm gonna come visit you.
What?
Where does he live? I want to come visit him.
Yeah.
Pittsburgh.
So you guys gotta get to Pittsburgh. Yeah, get down there.
Pittsburgh.
more hours. It's like going west.
Come visit, we'll share.
Okay.
Well, thank you guys. I'm gonna go check out what's going on in the music scene and see what Lewis did up to and see what the crowd is at Atwater for their evening music. It was great having you guys. Thank you so much. Remember, if you have any
Thank you.
questions,
These are always so cool.
email me if you have any other questions about the wines, or if there's something we didn't get to, let us know. And there's Amanda. Hey, Amanda, how's it going?
Hey,
And any questions that you need from Amanda, she's always there for you guys as club members. Things going on. If you haven't already, we do have I don't know, Rob, did you get some tickets? We have the sort of Vineyard table dinners that you already got some. There's, I think, one open. There's some seats open in the July one, and I think this email is going out. Keep an eye out for your next email, which my wife is putting out probably today or tomorrow. Then there will be another release of some other tickets for the Vineyard table dinners. Yeah, I think it's maybe the late July one. So that'll be on there. And we're doing the same thing. The first week is club gets to get their share of the tickets before we release it to the general public. So there's only 20 seats, 22 seats, something like that for each of those dinners. And our friends at Dean Lane are doing them again. So there's that. So thank you guys. We'll see you all soon.
Thank you.
I'll see you tomorrow, Wes and Amanda. Have a good
All
night.
right, George, one last question. How'd the
Yes.
lamp work out?
It's right here next to me. I have it on my side table.
You're gonna lift it one-handed? All right.
I am.
Oh, you lost a plant.
Oh, my plants are going over. No,
Oh,
it's
no.
next to my plant. Yes, I use it in my, it's by my phone here, on
Cool.
my side thing. So yes, it works very well. And I can see, that was a really good vintage, that Cab Merlot, 2004, that
Yeah,
giant,
Yeah.
that was very
bottle.
good.
That was a good,
Yeah,
that was a
that was
really
good.
good one.
I think we had the 21 Christmas party.
We did, yeah. It was
There's only
really
one
good.
bottle left, and I don't think it's
That cork got
it's had
bad,
some-
yeah.
Yeah, that cork's bad. We'll open it this year, but it's
This big
it's not
bottle
very
had it was actually wax, and I think it just more protected.
Mhm.
So it lasted.
Brett,
and
you
it
have to
was
talk to
awesome.
Amanda. That can be our anniversary wine since that's the year we got married.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't even know if we have any. I don't know
We-
if we have any bottles of that left.
I don't think we do. We
Yeah,
just
that
have
was-
we have the
Oh,
3
what-
liter, but it's
What
it's
We had
vintage?
those-
it's
2004.
04.
2004.
I can look for you right now. I
could-
have
Look in my fridge.
oh
I have some
kidding,
old
but I'm not-
Atwater Reds aging
in your
All right.
fridge?
in my wine fridge.
Oh,
Not my kitchen fridge, my wine fridge was.
I
All right.
The oldest
I
we
was
have
was
is
about to talk
09.
to you very strongly tomorrow.
Wes was about to get incensed. Yeah, you almost upset the winemaker.
I was gonna say.
There's got to be some other 2004. So we'll see what we can get up for you guys for your first
I was
celebration.
kidding, but thank you.
Sure.
Yeah, we might have
We've
some
got
around.
a year to look.
Yeah, we got to. Yeah, we'll find something down there. So, anything else
All
from
right,
anyone?
Have a good one.
Okay, thank you guys.
Thank
Thanks
you.
for
Bye.
all of our returning folks. Nice to see you, Carolyn. Take it easy. We'll see you at the next
Bye,
one.
take care.
Cheers.
Bye.
Bye. See you.